This year, the Tomb Raider franchise turns 25 years old. We here at Suggestive Gaming figured a perfect way to celebrate this occasion would be to look back at the story of all of the games featuring our favorite adventurer, Lara Croft, so far. Because this is obviously such a massive undertaking, this journey required me to recruit some help, so please welcome streamer and YouTuber Steve of Warr.
Thank you, please. Oh, you're too kind. Please hold your applause, please. They literally have my wife and kids. Please send help.
Seeing as the Tomb Raider franchise is so vast, we're going to split this into 3 separate videos, one for each of the game continuities. The original timeline containing the classic core design titles, the Legend timeline containing the first reboot Crystal Dynamics titles, and the modern timeline containing the currently running series by Crystal Dynamics as well. We'll also be covering a few supplementary materials, but since we're focusing on the video games timelines, we'll be leaving out various Tomb Raider and Lara Croft media. This includes the Angelina Jolie and Alicia Vikander-led films, a short-lived animated series, and the long-running Top Cow comic series. We'll also be leaving out various portable, mobile phone, and spin-off games, as well as some expansions and DLCs, mostly for brevity's sake. Before we begin, I do want to take a moment to thank the sponsor for this video, Displate. I've been a fan of Displate's wall art for years, so I was super excited to work with them on this video. I was actually blown away with the options of prints available on the site right now. There's over 1.4 million designs available in any category that fits your interests. I'm namely a gaming fan, and there's an abundance of art available featuring some of my favorite franchises. But I also love film, music, comics, and photography, and I found myself paging through for hours looking for the right thing to hang on my wall. If anime and manga are your thing, there's tons for you as well. After I placed my order, I was pretty surprised with how quickly the box arrived at my doorstep, especially since each Displate is printed on demand, even with the Master of Production signature right on the back. Hanging them is a cinch since all of the required material is included. All you do is clean the surface with a wipe that's also included as a pretty nice touch, place an adhesive leaf to protect the surface, then stick on the magnet, and you're ready to display the art. The whole process takes only a few minutes, and when you want to take it down, you leave nothing behind. I actually had purchased from Displate in the past to decorate an old apartment I lived in. The ease and non-destructive nature of hanging the prints were perfect for my situation where putting nails in the wall was frowned upon. Probably my favorite part of hanging a Displate is that if you've got multiple, you can swap them out as easily as removing the plate from the magnets, then putting on a new one. Plus, Displate plants one tree for every Displate sold, so you get to feel good about ordering a few. If you'd like to support Suggestive Gaming, then I recommend checking out Displate using the link in this video's description. There you can find some art I found and recommend, as well as the ones I'm hanging on my wall right now. Plus, for the first 2 weeks after this video, you can use that link to get 25% off of your purchase of 1 or 2 prints, or 35% off your purchase of 3 or more, applied at checkout. After this period, you'll still get 20% off until the end of April. Thanks again to Displate for making this video possible. Now, without further ado, this is what you need to know about Tomb Raider, starting with the original timeline. Our story begins millions of years before the Common Era when a meteor crashes into Earth, causing a large explosion, decimating the entire area. Throughout the following years, the Polynesians discover the meteor and find it to contain unnatural powers. They sculpt it into 4 separate artifacts before burying it inside a chamber beneath Antarctica. Years later, in ancient China, Emperor Qin Shi Huang obtains the Dagger of Xi'an, which he is able to use by plunging it into his heart. The dagger's mystical powers transform him into a gargantuan fire-breathing dragon, and he proceeds to lead his army to conquer the land. However, when the dragon-led army reaches the Great Wall, a Tibetan monk is able to bring a stop to the destruction by pulling the dagger out of his body. Later, the monks take the dagger to lock it away in the Temple of Xi'an, and when one places it in its resting place, a blast of energy kills him as the door locks behind.
Over 2,000 years later, in 1834, 4 sailors set off to travel around the world in Charles Darwin's ship, the HMS Beagle. In Antarctica, the crew find some meteoric artifacts. However, they are soon attacked by a pack of wolves and are forced to leave the caverns. One member of the crew, Paul Caulfield, dies during the escape, and the remaining crew decide to bury him, leaving a crude wooden headstone in his memory before sailing off to return home. Afterwards, the remaining 4 separate to different locations across the world, each taking an artifact with them. However, when 3 of them are subsequently murdered, one in Nevada, one in the South Pacific, and one in India, the surviving member, Stephen Barr, sells his artifact in London out of superstition.
On July 16, 1945, in Los Alamos, New Mexico, a nuclear test blasts open a buried device revealing a woman encapsulated in a frozen pod. In 1984, we meet 16-year-old Lara Croft, staying with her family butler Winston in his cottage in Ireland. As she gets ready for bed, her family's priest, Father Patrick Dunstan, enters the house to speak with Winston. Lara eavesdrops on their conversation, learning that the nearby villagers have been reporting sightings of apparitions on the Black Island. Father Patrick intends to head there to exorcise these spirits, and Lara sneaks onto his boat to investigate for herself. Once on the island, Lara comes across a ghastly undead spirit hanging from the gallows tree. He tasks Lara with returning his heart to its resting place, stolen from him and placed somewhere within the World Tree, promising an otherworldly reward. Lara looks for the heart and finds Father Patrick, surprised to see her there. He tells her to wait for him at the nearby chapel, and she heads out. She finds and releases the heart, allowing her to move forward into the chapel. There she sees a vision of death, and follows it into a labyrinth beneath the chapel. Inside the labyrinth, Lara finds a mysterious book before reuniting with Father Patrick once again, his hair now a ghostly white. The pair leave the labyrinth, and Father Patrick explains that the book she found is the Bestiary, which contains incantations on how to protect herself from the various demons on the island. Shortly after, Father Patrick is captured by an ancient demon on horseback called Verdelet. Verdelet explains that he is trapped at the old mill by the surrounding running water, which demons cannot cross. In order for Verdelet to release Father Patrick, Lara dams the water, freeing the demon. Now free from his imprisonment, Verdelet lets Father Patrick go, but quickly turns his sights to Lara. Father Patrick reminds her of the Bestiary, and she's able to quickly find Verdelet's entry and use the incantation to gain control of him and banish him to the mill for eternity. Afterwards, Father Patrick and Lara use his boat to return back to the mainland safely. Later that year, Lara takes up an interest in archaeology and joins her mentor, Werner von Croy, on an expedition to Cambodia in search for an artifact called the Iris. The pair make their way through a tomb, with Lara finding a backpack on the way. When they reach the Iris, however, the tomb begins to collapse around them, and Werner gets his leg caught in the mechanism housing the artifact. Lara is forced to leave him behind as she narrowly escapes while Werner gets enclosed within the mechanism.
Years later, in 1995, Lara arrives at an opera house in Rome where she meets with two men named Larson Conway and Pierre Dupont. The two men had hired her to retrieve the Mercury Stone for payment on delivery, but when the pair attempt to steal the stone and the money back for themselves, she is able to outmaneuver them and take the stone back, escaping into the streets. Lara later finds the gate leading to the Philosopher's Stone, no, not that one, and discovers that the Mercury Stone is one of the keys to opening it, leading her to search for the other three whilst Larson and Pierre watch on. However, when Lara returns with the Saturn Stone, Larson and Pierre arrive to try and steal it. But after Larson brazenly attempts to insert it into the gate by himself, he is set ablaze by a trap, leaving Lara to be able to continue on. Lara retrieves the Venus and Mars Stone and returns to the Philosopher's Gate, where she is again ambushed by Larson, who ends up being taken out by the Gate Serpent Guardians. After defeating the Guardians and venturing inside the gate, she finds the Philosopher's Stone, but before she has a chance to grab it, a trapdoor drops her into the pit below. She travels through the next area but ends up falling down another trapdoor where she's left hanging precariously off a ledge. Pierre then arrives and is convinced to save her in exchange for the treasure, but Lara, in an act of poetic justice, goes back on her deal and pushes him into the depths below. Lara then fights on and finally finds and collects the Philosopher's Stone.
The next year, Lara Croft is met in a hotel in Calcutta, India by Larson, who connects her via video call with his employer, Jacqueline Natla. Natla, the owner of Natla Technologies, offers Lara a job retrieving a mystic artifact from the unfound tomb of Qualopec in Peru. Lara, enticed by the hunt, agrees and makes her way to the Peruvian mountains. There, her and her guide, Carlos, find a large stone door, but when Lara opens it, a pack of wolves emerge and maul Carlos, instantly killing him. Lara is able to dispatch the wolves and heads into the caves beyond alone. Lara traverses the caves and eventually finds the entrance to Qualopec's tomb, but finds that she must stop a waterfall blocking its entrance. She then heads to the Lost World, an ancient area where dinosaurs have survived extinction, a mistake that she soon begins to correct. There, she fights off various velociraptors and a Tyrannosaurus Rex to find the mechanism to block the waterfall, allowing her to enter Qualopec's tomb. Inside, Lara finds a skeleton on a throne beside the artifact she was sent to retrieve. Upon grabbing it, however, the tomb begins to collapse around her, and she is forced to make a hasty escape. Outside, however, Lara is ambushed by Larson, who reveals that the artifact she recovered is merely a piece of something called the Scion, and that Natla had sent Pierre Dupont to find the rest. Lara then knocks out Larson with a swift kick before heading out to find and question Natla. Lara travels to Seattle, Washington, and breaks into Natla Technologies headquarters to find Jacqueline's office. There, she doesn't find the woman, but instead finds a prayer book belonging to a monk named Brother Herbert, which she reads to learn that the Scion holds the incredible powers held by the lost civilization of Atlantis. The Scion was split amongst the 3 rulers of Atlantis, another named Teoken, and the unknown third. Lara then learns that Teoken's tomb is likely underneath the monk's monastery, St. Francis Folly, in Greece. Upon arriving at the monastery, Lara finds remnants of Pierre Dupont's campsite, and she quickly follows after him. After chasing him around the tomb, Lara is attacked by a fire-wielding centaur, which she is forced to fight before battling head-on with Pierre himself. After emerging victorious and killing her rival, Lara finds Teoken's sarcophagus next to a mural telling the story of Atlantis and its 2 just rulers. Lara then takes his piece of the Scion, and when she combines it with the first she uncovered, she encounters a vision of Atlantis' destruction. In the vision, the 2 rulers take the third piece of the Scion from the other and hide it in a hidden tomb before imprisoning them. Armed with this knowledge, Lara travels to the lost city of Khamun in Egypt to find and recover the final piece of the Scion. There, Lara finds Larson one more time, who attempts to kill her for their previous interaction. Lara is then forced to fight and kill the man, leaving him behind as she finds the final piece of the Scion. Outside the tomb, Lara is ambushed and captured by 3 men who take her weapons from her before she is met by Jacqueline Natla herself, who takes the now complete Scion from Lara before commanding her men to kill her. Lara is able to break free at the last moment, however, and swan dives into a nearby river before Natla speeds off. Lara returns to her motorcycle and follows Natla's car, eventually finding her and her henchmen leaving on a yacht. Lara is able to sneak onto the yacht by loudly driving off a ramp and diving off the bike and into the water, then makes her way under the deck to a storage area where she passes out from exhaustion. When Lara awakens, she finds herself at the boat's destination, a desert island containing an underground system of mines used by Natla. Lara finds her weapons and kills all 3 of Natla's henchmen before finding the Great Pyramid of Atlantis. Just as Lara enters, Natla reaches a pedestal inside where she places the Scion, restoring the pyramid's energy source. Lara fights through several mutated creatures, including a fleshy doppelganger of herself, before reaching the top of the pyramid where she finds the pedestal with the Scion. When Lara grabs it, she encounters another vision of the past, where she learns that Natla herself was the 3rd ruler of Atlantis. After betraying the other rulers by using their Great Pyramid to create an army of her own twisted design, Qualipec and Teoken punished her by stripping her of her piece of the Scion before placing her in a frozen tomb, where she stayed until the nuclear test freed her. Natla then arrives and confronts Lara, revealing her plan to create a mutant army to strengthen and enhance humanity. Lara attempts to stop this plot by shooting the Scion, but Natla tackles her off the platform where they stand. Lara is able to grab onto a nearby ledge, but Natla falls to the depths below. When Lara climbs to safety, she discovers Natla's creation, a large mutated creature with no legs that she is fortunately able to defeat. Lara then climbs back up to the pedestal and shoots at the Scion, destroying it and triggering an explosion that begins to bring down the pyramid. As Lara makes her way through the collapsing structure, she is met by Natla once more, now showing her true Atlantean form. After a grueling battle, Lara kills her for good before narrowly escaping the now destroyed pyramid and leaving on Natla's yacht.
The next year, Lara arrives at the Great Wall of China to search for the Dagger of Shan. There she finds a series of catacombs and fights a pair of Tyrannosaurus Rexes on her way to the entrance to the dagger's resting place. As she investigates the door's locking mechanism, she's ambushed by a man named Claudio, who she easily defeats. He reveals to her that he is a follower of a man called Macho Broccoli, force of habit, Marco Bartoli, who tasked him to protect the door from being opened until the right time. He then pulls out a flask and upon drinking its contents, immediately dies. Lara then uses his laptop to learn that Bartoli resides in Via Carvelli, Venice, and immediately heads out to find him and the rest of his cult followers. She discovers an under-construction opera house is being used by the cult called the Fiamminera, and is able to sneak onto a seaplane of theirs where she eavesdrops on a conversation between Marco and his pilot. She learns that his father, Gianni Bartoli, had possessed something called the Seraph, which the Fiamma Nera is currently searching for. But before she can learn more, she's discovered and knocked out by the plane's mechanic. While she's unconscious, the plane docks at an offshore oil rig in the Adriatic Sea. When Lara awakens, she finds that all of her weapons have been taken away from her, but conveniently they decided to lock her in a room with a lever that's able to open the cell door. So it's not long until she escapes, finds her pistols, and is able to make her way through the facility. Eventually she finds Bartoli's men torturing a Tibetan monk in an attempt to learn the location of the Seraph. Lara takes them out to save the man and learns that the cult has been excavating the underwater shipwreck of Bartoli's father's vessel, the Maria de Ria, a ship that was sunk years ago by the monks to prevent him from using the Seraph to gain access to a powerful relic they hold in their monastery. After Lara changes into a nearby wetsuit, Marco arrives and shoots the monk dead, forcing Lara to run off to avoid the same fate. She spots a submarine submerging into the water and then dives in after it to follow the cult to the shipwreck at the bottom of the sea. Then after a passing shark sinks the submarine, Lara makes her way into the shipwreck, and after navigating through its dilapidated interior, she obtains the Seraph and floats back up to the surface. She commandeers the cult seaplane and then flies off towards Tibet to find the monks' monastery. As she reaches the Tibetan mountains, the plane runs out of fuel, so she's forced to eject via parachute before it crashes. After fighting her way through more Fiamma Nera mercenaries, Lara finds a snowmobile and rides it to the monastery, where she's able to use the Seraph to open a passageway to the caverns below. Inside, Lara is met with several threats including yetis, and has to do battle with a giant bird-like creature called the Guardian of Talion to obtain the final key to the dagger's chamber back in China. Once returned to the surface, she finds a mercenary camp and steals a jeep. She's then pursued by Bartoli, and after a gunfire-filled chase, is able to jump over a canyon and escape from them. Once back at the Temple of Shan, she uses the Talion to open the door and eventually finds the dagger, but falls through a trapdoor almost immediately before she can reach it. Below, Lara explores and fights various beasts to make her way back up to the dagger's chamber. However, Bartoli, who had followed her inside, beats her to it, and she witnesses the man impale himself in the heart with the dagger before being carried off by his men. Following Bartoli through the mythical floating islands of Shan, she eventually reaches the dragon's chamber just before he transforms into the mythical beast. Lara battles the dragon and is eventually able to remove the dagger powering him, reducing him to bone much like Emperor Qin Shi Huang did centuries earlier. However, this triggers a chain reaction and the tomb begins to crumble around her. She frantically sprints to the exit and narrowly escapes before an explosion seals up the temple for good. With Lara now back at home and with a fancy new butter knife for the kitchen, she begins to settle in for the evening. But just as she begins to relax, Bartoli's men arrive to avenge the death of their leader, forcing Lara to grab a nearby shotgun to defend her home. After a gunfight inside her mansion, Lara is able to defeat them all and rid the world of the Fiamma Nera for good, finally getting a chance to relax with a nice hot shower. But not before eliminating a curious spectator. Ow! Okay, fine, I get it, I'll leave.
The same year, Lara works with a hired hacker named Zip to infiltrate Von Croy Industries' headquarters, where Werner von Croy, who survived the tomb collapse 13 years prior, has stored the Iris artifact the pair initially ventured for. After working her way through the facility, battling its security on the way, Lara obtains the Iris and escapes the building via hang glider, while Von Croy's men try, and fail, to stop her. The next year, we find Dr. Mark Willard, founder of the RX Tech mining company, leading an excavation team in Antarctica, searching for the meteorite cavern discovered by the sailors on the HMS Beagle years ago. He is taken to a site nearby with a Polynesian statue much like those on Easter Island, and when he walks over to investigate the area, he discovers Paul Caulfield's headstone, indicating that he has found the HMS Beagle's landing site. Later that year, Lara learns of an artifact held by the Infada tribes near Calcutta, India, and she travels there to look for it. However, when she arrives, she finds an RX Tech camp inhabited by a researcher named Tony, who informs her that his partners, Randy and Rory, entered a nearby temple, one he plans to get away from as soon as possible. Lara heads inside the temple and finds Randy and Rory. However, both are dead and suspended in the air. After fighting some possessed statues of Shiva, Lara reaches the exit of the temple and once again finds Tony, sailing on a raft with a mysterious stone in his chest. She fires at him before he turns to her and uses some kind of supernatural power to trigger the platform Lara is on to collapse. She then finds a nearby quad bike and uses it to follow Tony down the river, eventually finding his raft crashed at the base of a waterfall. Inside the caves beyond the waterfall, Lara finds a now super-powered Tony, who she is forced to fight. After defeating him, she retrieves the Infata Stone and exits the cavern, conveniently finding Dr. Willard on a boat outside. The two then converse about the stone. He informs her of the meteorite the stone came from, the existence of 3 more, the fate of the sailors that found them, as well as their now rumored locations. He then asks Lara to help him retrieve the others, and always up for a challenge, she agrees and the pair head off. In Nevada, Lara looks to infiltrate Area 51 to look for the artifact, but ends up captured and imprisoned by the government. Lara is able to escape her cell and sneaks through the security compound to eventually find her weapons. She then sneaks into a truck which takes her into Area 51, where she finds alien bodies, caged orca whales, and finally an alien UFO. Inside the ship, she finds the artifact, called Element 115 by the US government. In the South Pacific, Lara finds a group of Australian soldiers who help her fight yet another surviving pack of dinosaurs before she finds their downed plane, using its turret to further reduce the world's dinosaur population and blast a hole in a nearby wall. She enters to meet a member of the nearby tribesmen who informs her that the Aura Dagger, created from the meteor, is currently held by a powerful figure known as Puna. Lara heads to Puna's temple and finds the supposed deity, killing him and taking the Aura Dagger for herself. In London, Lara is suddenly met with opposition by a squad of mercenaries, who she learns were hired by cosmetics tycoon Sophia Lee, who is in possession of the final meteorite artifact known as the Eye of Isis. After making her way underground, Lara is attacked again and ultimately captured by another group of enemies, known as the Damned. They take her to their leader, Bob, who reveals that they were Sophia Lee's test subjects for an unknown experiment into immortality, but were dumped in the sewers when the test failed. Bob tasks Lara with stealing them a bottle of embalming fluid from the Natural History Museum in exchange for their help in taking down Sophia. Eventually, with their help, or without, depending on if she collected the fluid or not, Lara reaches Sophia's office and confronts her about her failed test subjects. Sophia then grabs the artifact and runs off, but Lara follows her outside and shoots an electrical box, overloading a panel she is standing on, electrocuting and killing her immediately. Lara then grabs the artifact and leaves London. With the meteoric artifacts in hand, Lara heads to Antarctica to deliver them to Dr. Willard. However, on her way, the helicopter she is traveling in gets caught in a blizzard and crash lands, and she's barely able to escape before it sinks into the icy waters. On her way to find Willard, Lara comes across a mutated RX tech scientist, and when she finds Willard in his cabin, she confronts him about the mutation, only to find out that the scientist was mutated by the effects of the meteorite. Willard then reveals that with the artifacts in his possession, he can use their combined power to speed up the process of human evolution on a global scale. Lara, not agreeing with this plan, refuses to hand over the artifacts, but he knocks her over and steals them, running off afterwards. Lara follows Willard below the surface into the RX tech mines beneath, eventually finding them to lead to the lost city of Tinnus, where the ancient Polynesian civilization that discovered the meteorite once lived. After fighting several creatures mutated by the effects of the meteorite, Lara reaches Willard inside the chamber. Willard jumps into a cavern, and with the now concentrated power of the meteorite, he is mutated into a large, spider-like creature and attacks Lara. She is able to outsmart the Doctor by removing the 4 artifacts from their pedestals, weakening the power of the meteor and allowing her to finally kill the mutated Dr. Willard. Lara then climbs back to the surface, where she finds a helicopter landing. She approaches it, kills the pilot, and takes off. In the air, she is shot at by turrets, missiles, and eventually another helicopter, but she's able to outsmart and outmaneuver her opposition, allowing her to leave Antarctica with 4 new trophies for her mantelpiece.
Later that year, Lara travels to Russia with her friend and fellow archaeologist Charles Kane in search of the fabled Spear of Destiny. Lara infiltrates a Russian base and overhears Admiral Yarofev speaking with mob boss Sergei Mikhailov about a plan to take a submarine down to the depths below to search a sunken German U-boat from World War II. Shortly afterwards, she's able to make her way into the submarine's cargo hold, but is quickly captured by Yarofev and stripped of her weapons. Lara manages to escape to reclaim her lost gear and finds a diving suit to use to explore the surrounding waters to find the Spear of Destiny. However, an explosion causes debris to fall on her and puncture the suit's oxygen tank, and she's forced to return to the submarine before running out of air. There, she's confronted by Mikhailov, who steals the spear from her, but is quickly killed by an explosion caused by the spear's power, which also breaches the hull and causes the water to enter the ship. Lara runs off and finds a wounded Yarofev, who has a change of heart and decides to give Lara a key to a one-man escape pod, deciding instead to go down with the ship and die a hero. After finding the oxygen tanks for the pod, she then uses it to leave the submarine and the Spear of Destiny resting at the bottom of the Barents Sea.
The next year, Lara travels to Egypt in search of the Amulet of Horus. Her and her guide eventually find the tomb of Set, the Egyptian god of chaos. Realizing where they are, her guide leaves, but Lara continues on and finds a burial chamber with a sarcophagus holding the amulet. Lara takes the Amulet of Horus, and a beam of light shoots out of the sarcophagus. Lara returns outside and inspects the amulet, reading an inscription written by the ancient priest Semerket to learn that removing the amulet released Set from his eternal prison, allowing him to wreak havoc on the earth once again. Soon after, she is held at gunpoint by her guide, who demands her to hand over the amulet. She instead continues to read the inscription, and an explosion knocks the guide down, allowing Lara to pull her pistols on him before a sandstorm allows him to escape in a jeep. Lara finds another jeep and chases him, eventually reaching a dock on the Nile River, and she jumps her vehicle onto a boat leaving the shore. As she sails off, Werner von Croy arrives to attempt to stop Lara, but the guide informs him of the amulet's inscription from Semerket. Lara visits her friend Jean-Yves, who she shows the Amulet of Horus to. Jean-Yves immediately recognizes it and realizes that Lara has unleashed Set, informing her that she must find the tomb of Semerket to collect the armor of Horus in order to awaken the sun god so he can once again imprison Set. Lara determines that von Croy must also be after the armor and travels to the temple of Semerket at Karnak to set things right. Lara arrives and is able to collect the artifacts needed to find the entrance to the temple, and despite some interference by von Croy and his men, she is able to use the Amulet of Horus to get inside. As she enters, however, von Croy arrives and removes the amulet, causing the entrance to close, trapping her inside. Inside the temple, Lara plays a game with Semerket before reaching an inscription to learn that she needs to summon Horus when his constellation reaches its proper point. Lara then finds a giant bull, which she is able to lead into the doors and walls in order to escape the temple. Outside, Lara watches von Croy escape via helicopter and holds her former guide at gunpoint to learn his destination, Alexandria. She then takes his robes to disguise herself as she enters a nearby train to follow von Croy, leaving the guide behind to be devoured by the Guardian of Semerket from the temple. On the train, Lara fights through von Croy's men to reach the front, which she detaches to allow the train to travel faster to Alexandria. There, she meets back up with Jean-Yves, who tells her that they need to find the pieces of the armor of Horus in the surrounding area. Lara stops off at the world-famous Egyptian adventure theme park and eventually retrieves the pieces of armor, finding von Croy on her way, who refuses to believe Lara's warning of impending doom, and instead intends on recovering the pieces of armor for his own archaeological value. After Lara retrieves the final piece of armor from Cleopatra's palace, she returns to Jean-Yves, only to find him missing with his study overturned. She discovers a note from von Croy, who had taken her friend hostage en route to Cairo, but will release him in exchange for the full set of armor. Lara then grabs a nearby motorcycle to head to the meetup point. Meanwhile, von Croy's convoy is attacked by a plague of locusts, which allows Set to inhabit his body. In Cairo, Lara fights to find the citadel, and with the help of an Egyptian sergeant named Azizas, she is able to enter and free Jean-Yves from his captivity. Lara fights Set's reincarnated army and reaches his avatar, von Croy, who offers her ultimate power in return for the armor. Lara refuses and grabs the Amulet of Horus and escapes to Giza. There, Lara enters the Sphinx to find the way to the Temple of Horus beneath the Pyramid of Khufu. Once she arrives in the temple, she's able to use the armor, amulet, and the other artifacts she recovered to summon Horus. Set arrives to prevent this, but instead Lara is forced to escape and seals Set inside the temple as she escapes. After she seals the entrance, she emerges from the pyramid to find von Croy, offering to help her escape. She second-guesses his intentions, which leads her to wait too long as the pyramid collapses on top of her, trapping her inside and seemingly killing her. Von Croy then looks on, simply removing his hat and bowing his head in mourning.
Days later, a memorial service is held at Croft Manor, including her parents and Winston. Winston is then picked up by Father Patrick Dunstan, and the pair discuss Werner von Croy's continued attempts to find Lara in Egypt. Then, once at Croft Manor, they meet with Charles Kane inside the mansion, and the trio reminisce about Lara's life and adventures. Meanwhile, in Egypt, von Croy is able to enter the temple Lara was trapped in and finds her backpack, triumphantly stating, "We've found her!"
Sometime later, Lara awakens in a Cairo hospital, having been taken there by fellow archaeologist Kevin Mason Jr. She finds out, however, that this man is actually an imposter simply trying to gain Lara's trust to retrieve an ancient amulet. She's instead able to destroy the amulet, and later on learns that Werner von Croy is now residing in Paris. Afterwards, Lara goes on various adventures, including working for the CIA to recover Iraqi artifacts stolen by a man named Lancaster Erdmann, stopping a mysterious cult including one of her former friends, as well as working with the Order of the Bronze to restore their powerful bronze android.
Years later, in 2003, Lara is contacted by Werner von Croy to meet him in his new home in Paris. Werner pleads with Lara to help him find the 5 obscura paintings for his employer, a man called Eckhart. Lara, still at odds with von Croy over their storied history, refuses to help her former mentor, who exclaims that he is being stalked, fearing it might be by the Monstrum, who is a serial killer that is currently terrorizing Paris. In a last-ditched effort, von Croy hands Lara the address of his friend, Margot Carvier, for help, but Lara still refuses. Suddenly, von Croy pulls out a pistol and screams, "Get out!" and gunshots begin to ring out in the darkness. Afterwards, Lara then comes to and finds that her former mentor is dead with his blood all over her hands. Suddenly, the police arrive, and Lara, unsure of the events that had just transpired, decides to make a run for it, eventually reaching a dead end where 2 police dogs push her out of a window, taking her backpack in the process. Lara continues to run from the police through the streets of Paris before reaching the address von Croy gave her for Madame Carvier's apartment. Carvier lets Lara in, and she informs her of Werner's death. She reveals to Lara that since receiving the job from Eckhart, Werner had been fearing for his life. She also informs Lara that the obscura paintings are tied to ancient alchemy dark arts before giving Lara his field notebook and advising her to run before the police arrive. Lara leaves and takes shelter in an abandoned subway car, and when she awakens, she investigates von Croy's journal to learn that his research involved someone named Louis Bouchard. So she proceeds to ask around the Parisian ghetto to find out any information about the man that she can. Lara then meets a friendly prostitute by the name of Janice and learns that Bouchard used to run a club called Le Serpent Rouge, but had to have it shut down when several employees of his had been killed by the Monstrum. She also reveals the news of the Monstrum's latest victim, Madame Carvier. After interrogating a former employee of the club at a cafe, Lara is tasked with sneaking into the abandoned club to retrieve a box for him in exchange for the location of Bouchard's hideout. Whilst this is all going on, a male customer of the cafe sits by and listens on, who Lara then sees leaving on his motorcycle afterwards. Lara finds the box and returns it to the employee, only to be told that the male customer from earlier had asked him about Bouchard as well. He then leads Lara to his ex-girlfriend, Francine, telling her that she knows where Bouchard is. Then after Lara heads to Francine's apartment, she meets with a woman who tells her that Bouchard is hiding out under the church. Lara finds her way into the church's crypt and finds Bouchard's hideout, and inside discovers a deformed man named Arnold strapped to a bed. Afterwards, she finds Bouchard himself and asks him about the man, but he refuses to answer. Upon further questioning about his connection to Werner, Bouchard eventually admits that von Croy asked him for information regarding an archaeological dig site underneath the Louvre, as well as some weapons. He offers Lara the same thing in exchange for a favour, delivering passports to a local pawnbroker called Daniel Wren. Later, Lara arrives at the pawnbroker's and is knocked aside by a mysterious lumbering man on his way out. When she enters the room to deliver the passports, she finds it in complete disarray with the man's corpse in the back room alongside a symbol written on the floor in his own blood. Lara finds Wren's vault and retrieves the weapons acquired for Werner, but shortly afterward a time bomb is set to explode, forcing Lara to escape and leap to safety through a sewer pipe and onto a nearby boat as the mysterious customer from the cafe watches on once again. Meanwhile, the tall, lumbering man that Lara saw meets with 3 other members of a group called the Cabal and reveals himself to be Peter van Eckhart, the clients who hired Werner von Croy. Eckhart discusses the Cabal already possessing 3 of the 5 obscura paintings and the 4th being located in Paris. He intends to find this fourth painting and then reconvene in Prague to find the fifth, where they will then use them to awaken a being called the Sleeper, the last of an ancient angel/human hybrid species known as the Nephilim. Eckhart then dispatches his bodyguard Martin Gunderson to get the painting from the Louvre. Sometime later, Lara infiltrates the Louvre through the sewers and finds Carvier's office to take her security card. There, Lara learns that Eckhart is the head of the Cabal and he created the paintings in the 13th or 1400s in order to hide the Sanglyph, or blood sign, but they were stolen from them by a society of Christian monks called the Lux Veritatis, and their leader, Brother Obscura, painted over them to mask their power. They then hid the original paintings all over Europe whilst hiding maps to their locations in secret copies called the Obscura engravings. Lara uses Carvier's security card to reach the dig site and finds a giant tomb which she explores to find a room guarded by the ghost of Brother Obscura which holds the painting. Lara grabs the painting and returns to the Louvre, only to find it overtaken by Gunderson and his army of mercenaries. Lara tries to escape but is ambushed by the mysterious customer from the cafe, who then takes her weapons and the painting. As he goes to leave, Lara gives chase and the pair eventually leave the museum, but as Lara exits, she notices the man is unconscious on the ground. As she investigates, she's knocked out herself by the same mercenary who shapeshifts to resemble Bouchard's doorman, implying there's more to this person than meets the eye. Sometime later, Lara is surprisingly awakened by Bouchard, and as she gets up, she quickly grabs and stashes a dagger the mysterious customer had dropped earlier. Lara asks Bouchard to take her to Von Croy's apartment, and the pair head off with his driver. On their way, Bouchard informs Lara that the latest monstrum killing is an art dealer in Prague named Matthias Vasily, who Von Croy had also mentioned in his notes. The car arrives at Von Croy's apartment and Lara heads in alone. Once she's gone, Bouchard makes a phone call and tells the receiver to send in the cleaner. Inside Von Croy's apartment, Lara is able to remember that Werner wasn't trying to shoot her. In fact, he was trying to warn her to get out of the way so he could protect himself against Eckhart, who was also there. Interestingly, it was originally here where we were also going to learn about how she survived the Last Revelations ending, which was going to be vastly different from the books and involve a shaman priestess from a Bedouin tribe who saved her and passed on a magical amulet for her to use. But outside of a short blurb on the official website, a deleted scene, and some interviews, this plot point sadly never got expanded upon in the game. Before long, the cleaner arrives and attempts to assassinate Lara, but she's able to fight him off. Lara avoids his traps and kills the man before his phone rings, and when she answers it, she hears Bouchard on the other end, asking if Lara is dead as they have to hurry back to Prague. Lara responds to him, scaring the man off, and she decides to follow him to Prague. Lara arrives outside Vasily's apartment where she meets a reporter called Thomas Luddick, who shares his information with her regarding the Cabal's involvement with the murder over Vasily's refusal to give them something of value. Luddick tells Lara that all of the Cabal members are currently working out of the Strahov monastery and agrees to help Lara by getting access codes for her. While Lara waits for his return, she heads into Vasily's apartment to investigate his murder. In the basement, she finds Bouchard and handcuffs him to a radiator before interrogating him. Bouchard reveals that Eckhart is in fact the monstrum and had forced Bouchard into helping him to retrieve the paintings by killing all of his men. Originally, Bouchard was ordered to help Lara retrieve the painting before killing her and taking it himself.
He reveals that the final painting rests in a location called the Vault of Trophies, a Lux Veritatis stronghold beneath the Strahov that Eckhart has been unable to get into thus far.
Lara then finds what the Cabal were after in Vasily's apartment, the fifth Obscura engraving and the final painting's location. She returns to Bouchard, but instead finds him dead inside a closet. Lara then returns to Luddick, who gives her the code to enter the Strahov, and Lara heads inside. There she sneaks through the ventilation ducts and witnesses Eckhart murdering Luddick and painting a rune on the wall in his own blood. After fighting her way through some security guards, she finds a Cabal member named Grant Mueller, who fills her in on the experiments conducted by another Cabal member called Boaz, who is trying to recreate the Nephilim without the Sanglyph, but resulted in the birth of an abomination they called the Proto-Nephilim. Lara turns off power to the facility, freeing the Cabal's mutated creatures, then continues on and comes across Eckhart once again, this time arguing with Boaz about the Proto-Nephilim. She admits that this creature still exists due to her not being able to destroy it without something called a Periap shard. Eckhart then orders Mueller to kill her for being disloyal using one of his mutant creatures called the Pod. Not long afterwards, Lara's progress is halted when she is trapped in an airlock by none other than the cafe customer who had been following her this whole time. He explains to her that he intends to keep her locked up so she'll stay safe and out of his way. Lara shows him the dagger that she took after their first encounter, and he exclaims that it's in fact a Periap shard. The man states that he'll deal with that later before leaving to restore power to the facility. He then journeys through a nearby sanitarium, using supernatural abilities to allow him to project his consciousness away from his physical body in order to unlock various doors. He eventually reaches the Proto-Nephilim and destroys it using one of his Periap shards before turning the power back on and returning to Lara. Upon his return, Lara gets the drop on him, but ends up protecting him ultimately from one of the creatures of the sanitarium. The man expresses his thanks and introduces himself as Curtis Trent, whose father was killed by Eckhart years ago. Curtis then tells Lara that Eckhart has the third and final Periap shard, and if they can join all three shards, they can be used to destroy the alchemist for good. The pair agree to work together to achieve their ultimate goal, taking down Eckhart. Curtis then heads off to find the final shard whilst Lara seeks out the final painting. Unbeknownst to them, Eckhart had been monitoring their entire conversation, and he instructs his right-hand man, Joachim Karel, to prepare for Curtis's arrival. And I'm very sorry if I got that name wrong. Lara swims through the aquatic research facility underneath the Strahov and solves various puzzles before reaching the Vault of Trophies. There she is able to retrieve the painting and returns to the surface, where she finds Eckhart waiting for her on the balcony above with a captured Curtis. Eckhart sarcastically congratulates her on retrieving the painting, something they had been unable to do up until this very point, and he demands that she hand over the painting to them in return for their safe release. Lara tosses him the painting, and he kicks Curtis down to her level. Instead of letting them go, however, Eckhart releases Boaz, revealing that Mueller's mutant did not kill her, but instead transformed her into an abomination. For this failure, Eckhart has Gunderson throw Mueller down to the lower level to suffer the same fate as their adversaries, which doesn't take too long as Boaz immediately eats him. Curtis gives Lara his Periap shard and boosts her up to the ledge, telling her to find the final shard whilst he stays behind to fight Boaz. She runs off as Curtis begins a grueling battle with the creature, eventually defeating her, but not before she impales him in the abdomen, causing him to pass out and begin bleeding out onto the floor. Meanwhile, Lara makes her way to Eckhart's lab and finds the final Periap shard. When she exits the lab, however, she finds Eckhart already combining the paintings to form the Sanglyph, which he begins to use to resurrect the sleeper. Lara battles Eckhart, eventually stabbing him with both shards before grabbing the third. However, she's stopped by Karel, who surprisingly kills Eckhart himself. Karel then reveals that he had been the true mastermind behind the Cabal all along, and that he is actually a shape-shifting Nephilim who took the form of Ludic and Bouchard to help Lara out. But during this revelation, she notices a symbol on Karel's hand, which matched the one on Eckhart's hand in Von Croy's apartment, and determines that it was actually Karel in disguise as Eckhart who killed Werner Von Croy instead. Karel offers Lara life eternal to join him in his new order, but she refuses. Grabbing the Sanglyph off the pedestal and jumping to the sleeper, she places the Sanglyph on the sleeper, causing it to explode, destroying it, and finally killing Karel along with it. Afterwards, Lara returns to where she left Curtis, finding only a puddle of blood with his weapon nearby. When she picks it up, it points her towards a nearby open door, and she smiles before walking into it to look for her new ally. This is the last we see of this incarnation of Lara Croft, with her and Curtis's fate left permanently unknown, as the series was then rebooted into a new timeline.
And with that, we complete our journey through the original Tomb Raider series. But much like Lara, Steve and I need a bit of a break before returning. So make sure you subscribe with notifications on so you can check back in when we go over Crystal Dynamics' first reboot series, starting with Tomb Raider Legend, in part 2 of this series.
In the meantime, if you want something else to watch, you can check out my ongoing retrospective of the Tomb Raider series over on my channel. And who knows, you might even learn something new. My family's life depends on it.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like and comment on what you would want to see next. Also consider supporting on Patreon or becoming a member on YouTube, links in the description, with a huge thanks to those folks on screen now. Another huge thanks goes to Steve of Warr. Be sure to check out his channel in the description and on screen now. And of course, another thanks to Display. Check them out in the description as well. See you next time.